Welcome back to another segment of the 3&D podcast. We're your hosts, Rashab and Gabe. And Gabe, we got a good one today again. We're talking about the Memphis Grizzlies once again, but this time, Ja Morant's injured and they've been playing really, really well. So at the time of this recording, the Grizzlies are 16-2 without Ja Morant. And there's been this buzz in the media. There's been this question that's being floated around, is Ja overrated in that sense? Like, do the Memphis Grizzlies really need Ja to be their best version of themselves? And, basically they're asking, is Memphis better without Ja Morant? So I want to pose that question to you. Do you think the Memphis Grizzlies are better without Ja Morant?
So the quick answer here is absolutely not. The record of 16-2 without him really is an outlier, I guess, because most teams don't even have that record with all their stars. But they are beating all these teams that they're playing with their team. But realistically, when it comes to advancing in the playoffs and playoff basketball, you really need your ceiling to be at a height. And what the Memphis Grizzlies are showing is that they have a very low floor. Even just looking at the teams they're beating and how they're beating them, they're pretty much playing with a full 10-man rotation, a lot of guys getting a lot of playing time, and they're pretty much running up and down the court, scoring at will on these guys on fast breaks and stuff like that, which is good. Like, it's good for mid-season or these like dog days of summer type games where it's like right before the NBA playoffs where teams are sort of looking through seeding and trying to adjust like where they want to be. But when it comes down to an actual playoff series, like you'll definitely need your star player to elevate the team. So my real answer is Memphis is not a better team without him. But what I really do think this does, though, with Memphis playing so well, I think this puts an end to the Ja Morant MVP case. Like, I know he's going to get votes here and there, but like now that there's the narrative that the team can succeed without him, and it's not necessarily like a solo push where he's carrying the team to a good record, even though like I understand Memphis is the 2 seed in the West, they're probably going to finish with either the second or third best record in the league at the end of the season. Just the narrative wise, I think this is going to put an end to his MVP case. So that's what I think the real significance in Memphis playing well is.
Yeah, so I hate to agree with you, but I do agree with you that I don't think Ja can win MVP. And it's kind of like it's weird because the criteria for MVP usually is you need to have a good team. But it's almost like your team needs to lose when you're not there, and you need to have a good record. And you need your team. You have to rank well in terms of your conference, in terms of your standings in the NBA. And it's kind of like, okay, well, the team wins and they have a good record, but they also win without him, so that goes against. Like, it's kind of weird, but you're right. Historically, we've seen that the guys who win MVP, when they're out, their team struggles a lot. They lose a lot of games that they shouldn't lose. You can use the Warriors as a great example right now. Steph's out. They're losing to Orlando, right? And then you have the Grizzlies. Morant's out. They're beating Brooklyn, who's got star power. Maybe not the best team. They've got star power, good talent. The Grizzlies are beating not just bad teams, they're also beating and being competitive against the good teams. And so that's what I wanted to say. I just want to piggyback on what you said. Like, yeah, they're definitely not a better team without him and there's two reasons. So I'll talk about why they're good without him right now in terms of the regular season. And then I'll go into what that means for their playoff chances and why they really need him in the playoffs. So the Grizzlies, without Ja Morant, have an offensive rating of 118 points per 100 possessions, a defensive rating of 104 points per 100 possessions, and a net rating of 17.4, which is the best in the NBA over, like, if you took Ja Morant out of the lineup and put him over an 82-game season, and they were able to maintain this level, that is the best point differential in the NBA in terms of O rating, D rating, and net rating. With him, they have 114.5 offensive rating, 108.8, and a net rating of 5.7. So on the surface, you look at that and you think, okay, wow, they really are better without him. But that's not the true representation because, one, the reason they're so good is depth. And we know that depth wins in the regular seasons. You already touched on it. They got a 10-man rotation. They're deep. They're talented. Some of their bench guys could be starters on other teams in the NBA. But they're obviously bought into the system. They've bought into what the team's trying to accomplish in terms of winning. And so they have a lot of talent up and down that roster, which is what's helping them win games, even when Morant is out. But we all know depth is not what gets you to win in the playoffs. And just speaking to their depth, Right now, their bench scores 38.1 points per game. That's sixth in the NBA. They play a league leading 98.5 minutes per game. So of the total distribution of minutes for players, Memphis has the highest amount of the minutes, like the highest amount of total minutes played per game allocated to bench players. There's only 4 teams in the league that average above 95. Memphis at 98.5. And Memphis's bench leads the NBA in steals at 4.6, leads at blocks at 2.5. They lead them in assists at 9.8 and rebounds. Like this team is deep. There's every statistic, every measure, the eye test, it all points to this being a very good, deep team. And that bodes well for them in the regular season. But this won't translate to playoff success because in the playoffs, the rotations tighten. A lot of teams start going 7, 8 guys deep, where you just play your best 7 or 8 guys, and of those 7 or 8, your starters are usually playing heavy minutes, especially the further you get into the playoffs, where the teams and the competition gets better. So having a lot of depth won't help you in round 2, in round 3, and then potentially if you make it to the finals, where you're playing a lot of minutes against top end talent, where these bench guys may not be as successful. And the other key sort of point I want to make is true playoff success is contingent upon having shot creators in your lineup. And Memphis, without Ja, doesn't have that. Taylor Jenkins has done a great job helping them build a defensive system and a ball movement San Antonio Spurs like team oriented system. But that is very difficult to translate to success the deeper you get in the playoffs, because teams start to the scouting report gets more detailed. Teams pay more attention to your second, third, fourth options on a play, and when you're in a 7 game series and you're going 4, 5, 6 games, both teams know each other's plays. Both teams know what other teams are going to run, and it just ends up boiling down to who can create shots for each other, which team has a better shot creators. Those are usually the teams that are going to win the games. And Memphis's bench unit and Memphis's roster outside of Ja doesn't really have a shot creator, and I think that's where his importance will show come the playoffs when they need a guy. A play breaks down. You have 8 seconds on a shot clock. You need a guy to create something out of nothing. Ja's going to be that guy. Without him, they don't really have that. And this team reminds me of like everybody's saying, oh, they're better without him. Kind of reminds me of the 2019 Raptors or the Warriors with KD when KD was injured. Like the 2019 Raptors were 17-5 without Kawhi. That's a good record. Now, could they have won the championship without Kawhi? I think everybody agrees that probably wouldn't have happened. And the Warriors were like 33-1 or something, or 33-2 or whatever it was without KD. And then there was this whole thing going on at the time, like, are they better without KD? And you can make that argument because Steph gets fully unleashed, but we also do know that with KD, they went 16-1 in the playoffs, I think, in their first year.
Yep.
Like they ran through every single team, and they just lost the one game in the finals to Cleveland. It's hard to argue against those results, 16-1. So using those as your sort of comparison points and basis points, it's hard for me to say that they're better without Ja. But one thing that we can take away from this is that this Memphis team is really good, and they're deep, and they got talent on that roster outside of Ja too.
No, I completely agree, and I think the Raptors comparison is much more relevant than the Warriors one, because at least the Warriors, even without Kevin Durant, you still have a star caliber player, whereas the Raptors didn't. We could argue, and also definitely the Grizzlies don't have a star caliber player now. But I think the
Yeah,
one thing to really watch out for is if we're really believing that this knee injury is minor in detail and that we actually think he's coming back, because I know it says he's going to be reevaluated in a span of 2 weeks. But I guess the knee, it's always really tricky. So it might not even be a guarantee that he shows up right away just in time for the first round. Like, I know they've been keeping pretty quiet with it, and there hasn't been too much to really talk about the Grizzlies. Like, I'm sure if the Grizzlies were not 16-2 and they were losing every game right now, everyone would be talking about the significance of Ja Morant being injured and out. But
yeah,
right now, like, that's not a story at all because they're winning. But realistically, like, even just looking at them right now, they're the best offensive and overall rebounding team in the NBA,
yep,
and they play at the highest pace of any playoff seeded team from 1 to 6. So I'm not including teams in the play-in, but usually like Houston plays with a really high pace. they're obviously run and gun. Like they don't play any defense there. But like a lot of the teams are going to be playing, they're going to have to win the game in the half court. Like your offensive rebounding is really going to drop because they're not on these like fast breaks, right? And when
Yeah,
like you're setting up a quick shot and missing, and there's like a whole bunch of court that's wide open for a rebound, like they're going to be playing a completely different style of game depending on which team they play.
right.
And like the way they play, like how they're running through teams right now in the regular season, it's going to be much different because you're not going to be able to do that in a 7-game series. You might be able to for game 1 or game 2 or something like that, but the moment they adjust, all of a sudden it's your turn to adjust and see how you deal with it. So I think there's like room for a little bit of concern on his injury, only because I don't really know what the severity with his knee is. Now he all in all, he could just be load managing too right now, right? Like Memphis is locked in. They're pretty much going to get the second seed. Yeah, they can't catch the first seed. Phoenix is already clinched, so it's only if the Warriors can catch them, which they won't. And I don't know if they really want to. I think they're more content with playing a 6 seed team than getting the chance of maybe an LA Lakers, or even I saw a report the other day that Paul George and Kawhi Leonard might be available for the playoffs. Like those teams are, I think,
They're scarier than the six
reputation
seed.
wise, yeah, you want to avoid them.
Yeah. No,
So
I agree, and I think if like you said, if this is a we don't know too much about this injury, and if it ends up being a little bit more serious, and Memphis has to go around without Ja, they could be in trouble depending on who they get in that. If they get anyone other than Minnesota, and even against Minnesota, it would still be tough without Ja. But if they get anyone other than Minnesota, if they get like the Lakers or the Clippers or something, for example, and they don't have Ja, yeah, you start to worry that they might not make it out of the first round. But well, that's a later discussion. I think we both agree that they're definitely not better without Ja, but they are a good team.